Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all today. Basically, I'm going to only pose one question in my time with you, and I think it's quite a fundamentally important one. I'll offer some experience in addressing that question, and I'll put forward, lastly, some ideas of potential future collaborations. So, what is the question? So first of all, as we all know, science and engineering is not a static human activity. It evolves rapidly with time, and right now the practice of international science and engineering has changed greatly even over the course of my professional career, with such factors as an increased team-based rather than individual, more interdisciplinary, and more of a recognition of the responsibility of science and engineering to address these grand challenges facing humanity. And lastly, with a great deal more of international collaborative activities. So that's some elements of the changing practice of science. And this changing practice, in turn, calls for new types of leadership roles which may tap well onto the interests and abilities of a far more diverse set of people than those traditionally attracted to science and engineering disciplines. And there are indications that they have a differential impact on our ability to attract women and for women's leadership roles in science and engineering. So the pragmatic question is, if this is the case, then how do we structure our international research and educational collaborations better so that we can leverage the opportunities that are inherent to the changing practice of science to, on the one hand, attract a more diverse set of participants to science, but on the other hand, for science to do a better job in service to society. So that's the whole focus of my talk. So women in science and technology, mathematics, engineering, we've heard a lot about it, a lot of wonderful talks in the past few days. So I won't go over details or numbers about that. We know that almost everywhere women are seriously underrepresented. So what about quote-unquote global programs? I was very happy to see earlier today the talk by Miyako Watanabe, in which you pointed out the strengths of Japanese girls and women in the international domain. And that holds true across many countries, probably most countries. If you look at things like our university study abroad programs, women really are much overrepresented compared to men typically. And then, of course, humanities, language studies, the social sciences, exactly those topics which our professional societies in science and engineering tell us they want our students to be more involved in and more aware of. So can we structure our academic programs to have more of an interdisciplinary, multinational, project-based approach? In other words, integrating the research agenda of our universities with these broader social goals and in turn enhance the participation. I must say that I do have a little bit of a higher education bias. I've been a university professor all of my life, other than my years at Unesco. And I firmly believe that when our STI ecosystems are working well, it's the research universities that are the beating heart of these systems. And so, though universities are hard to change, we have a very strong need for transformation of our higher education systems if we really are going to realize broader goals in science and engineering. So again, I'm going to offer some brief experience, starting with personal experience in academia before joining UNESCO, because all of this I've found in previous talks somehow seems a little bit more vague. So here's some examples about so-called multinational, multidisciplinary, project-based approaches. What are the kind of design features to make these things work? Universities across national boundaries working together on a common research agenda. So first of all, one of our big problems is that the research agenda and the educational agenda, it's usually never the twain shall meet except in the doctoral programs. If we can restructure our curricula so as to focus on research from the very beginning, even from freshman year, around these grand challenges, and have the students work in interdisciplinary teams, in which for the science and engineering components, the humanities and the social sciences and the language are incorporated, and invoke the participation of allies from other branches of society, we have the possibility of having a new, very powerful model for our research universities worldwide. So starting in the early 90s, we began to explore this in the University of Washington, where I was for about 15 years. And one of our first collaborations was on first-year engineering design with Tohoku University in Japan in Sendai. And the idea is to get the kids when they're 17, 18 years old, before we've ruined them and made them think that they don't know anything, get them involved in binational research projects, but also to focus on incorporating elements of language and culture study on both sides. So we did this over many years and found tremendous interest and ability to attract a more diverse group of students, including women, and things such as retention rate and retention in research and all sorts of benefits. My colleagues said, well, okay, you can do this in engineering, Gretchen, it's a team-based activity, we couldn't really do it in other fields, and so we explored this model in a wide variety of other disciplines around the university, as you'll see, you know, law, social work, urban design, et cetera, and really had good results in showing that we can get freshmen, first-year students working together in multinational teams on real important research projects. So another example, which was really the focus of a lot of my work for a number of years before leaving University of Washington to go to the UC system, was a collaborative full 4-year curriculum in which the universities on both sides and other sectors of society on both sides identified the common challenges facing the US Pacific Northwest and Southwest China and hit on 5 major research themes: water, biodiversity, forest resources, environmental anthropology, and what did I miss? Oh, my own field, so-called eco-materials. So anyway, in this case, what we did is we designed a fully collaborative curriculum which starts from day one, has the students coming in from their first day at the university, working in these binational research teams, incorporates very heavy language and culture studies, year-long reciprocal exchange, equal numbers, senior thesis, et cetera, and we moved on later to actually incorporate a collaborative doctoral program. My point here is that these kind of activities are very attractive to women students. Empirically, a lot of young women come into the university with they like math and science, they're thinking maybe they want to do engineering, but the curriculum's so packed it means they have to abandon their other interests and they're torn. And should we structure activities like these, we have a chance of greatly diversifying the student body. So at UNESCO, very briefly, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this domain, how this central question plays out in the UN agency with the main mandate for science within the UN system. I usually find that people don't know much about science at UNESCO, so very briefly, you can read faster than I can speak, and my slides will be available. What does UNESCO do in science? Well, we work on topics in which multinational collaboration is inherently necessary. Think oceans, freshwater resources, et cetera. The other part that's very important is to help member states in developing their own capacity for science and technology and innovation. And of course, with the UN and peace, we also try and focus on areas in which there is a conflict avoidance, conflict resolution component, such as transboundary aquifers. In all of the work, gender equality is an overarching priority of UNESCO. I won't have time to go through this in a great deal of detail, but the moving parts of the UNESCO science activity include intergovernmental science programs in some of the areas listed here. Well, also an incredible network of UNESCO-related institutions, one of which is led by Dr. Yi here, about 30 in the area of science around the world. Some very large-scale institutes, like for theoretical physics, for water in Delft, the Third World Academy of Science, et cetera. Physical presence around the world, there's about 53 UNESCO offices worldwide, but 5 main ones for science. The sites, World Heritage Sites, biosphere reserves, geoparks, which provide places for doing a lot of this work with local communities, and then the UNESCO Chairs around the world. So I just wanted to give a bit about what these activities look like. And again, ISTIC, the baby of our chair here is one of the prime examples of a successful Category 2 center under UNESCO. It has many foci, about 5 foci, but among them it's notable in having a very strong goal of the promotion of leadership for women in science, technology, and innovation. Here's a photo from a recent workshop. I participated in these workshops when I was with UNESCO, and they're successful in drawing participants from many countries around the world, and ISTIC has a very strong focus on the developing world, which we appreciate very greatly. There are other foci within ISTIC which you can look at on the website, but it's a marvelous institution. Okay, I mentioned the gender chairs, and I provide the UNESCO chairs, and I provide some link below. There's a number of chairs that focus specifically on gender, and a subset of those on gender and science and technology. And there's also an overarching global network which tries to bring together the UNESCO chairs working on issues of gender, and that was catalyzed and led by Dr. Gloria Bonder. We participate very actively in this Gender Insight program, which has been mentioned by a number of speakers below, and launched by these organizations which you see, which all have strong ties to UNESCO. And Gender Insight has a number of activities. An important one is the data issue. We're working with support from Elsevier, and workshops on gender and STI policy, and participation in the last summit. Unfortunately, there's nobody here except for myself as an ex-board member of Gender Insight at this conference here today, but I urge you to take a look at more at their activities. The UNESCO Loreal Awards have been mentioned a number of times also, and they've been a very interesting and I think fascinating way of really bringing the visibility of women in science up on the world stage. There are awards for senior women, 2 of which have gone on to get the Nobel Prize to date, but also awards for more junior women, and some national awards. And again, the importance of awards for enhancing visibility and increasing participation are well known. Okay, so those are all programs within UNESCO that specifically are targeted. Gender is in even their title usually. But as I said, we have a conviction of the importance of incorporating gender in all of the work. And I'll just, as an example, talk about water, which is probably the strongest area within science at UNESCO, with 169 countries participating in this intergovernmental program, thousands of water professionals around the world setting a collective research and educational agenda, multiple centers, and one of the notable facts about this water effort is that over time, being just sort of regional hydrologists with their very focused hydrology, they've gone more into the impact of water on society, water and gender, water education, and I urge you, if you're interested either in water or in intergovernmental science processes, to take a look at the IHP, the International Hydrological Program. It provides a base because there's these water chairs and water centers that come together all around the world, and they can be mobilized. For example, with the floods in Pakistan, 5 centers from around the world immediately mobilized to work in Pakistan on the flood work. Okay, I haven't kept track of time, but this is my last slide. I mentioned that I would put forward some ideas. So again, the central question is, can we use the propensity of women's interest in international collaborations as a strategic lever to enhance leadership roles for women in science and engineering? Well, we need a lot more data. And so the first thing that I would propose is that we could leverage some of the existing efforts to more explicitly try and find out what are the current participation levels on a national and regional level of women in international activities. What barriers are there? Which are the most successful, et cetera. But then also to look at the career trajectories of women who do end up participating and taking on leadership roles in international science and engineering. My personal gut feeling is that the answer to the first question is that yes, we can certainly use these international collaborations to attract more women. I'm confident about that. What's going to be the impact on the career trajectories ultimately? That's a more difficult question, because anything that takes somebody away from the traditional metrics of a disciplinary-based approach in some merit systems will be in fact detrimental to the career? Will the institutions value these enhanced leadership roles that women are capable of taking on in these new interesting domains? So that's more of an analytical, this first one is more of an analytical study, which I would be very interested in talking to anybody who's interested in participating in. But a more project-based thing would be to build on some of the alliances. I was very happy to hear Professor Bakendig talking about these networks of research universities. And there are lots of great existing networks. And we could reach out to existing networks, but with an open-ended type of an approach, and see which research universities might be interested in getting involved in some larger scale pilot initiatives to explore these kinds of multinational research-based collaborations, and to explore their potential for, one, enhancing the diversity of the science and engineering workforce, and two, improving the quality of our research. So thank you very much.